Hi, this is Bill, and this is Progpaganda. Not too long ago on this YouTube channel, I presented an episode called Who Says Led Zeppelin's Not Prog? In that episode, I attempted to display how Led Zeppelin, while not a progressive rock band at their core, were very inventive and very aware of the trends in music that were taking place around them in the 1970s, and that they incorporated various prog rock techniques in their music over the course of that time. Quite a few of you agreed with my analysis there. Some of you did not, to be sure. But it made for interesting conversation, so much so that I'm coming back and going to pursue a similar line around another artist, Elton John. Now, I'll start out by saying Elton John is not a core progressive rock artist either, and he tended to flirt with these types of mechanisms far less than Led Zeppelin did. But Elton John did have a partner in crime when it came to some of his more esoteric or experimental approaches. That person was David Henschel. Dave Henschel had a rather interesting resume. He was a versatile man in the studio, both as a studio musician. He was a great keyboard player and was particularly well-heeled on the ARP synthesizer. He also worked as a recording engineer and ultimately as a record producer. Henschel was in particular involved in the work of Genesis, going back to their 1971 album, Nursery Crime, and ultimately graduating to become their producer in the early days of Phil Collins's stepping forward as lead vocalist with the band. Dave Henschel co-produced all of Genesis's work from 1976's A Trick of the Tail up through 1980's Duke. He also had one rather bizarre credit on his resume. As a synthesist, he reconstructed track by track a synthesizer answer to Ringo Starr's 1973 solo album, Ringo, called Startling Music. Dave Henschel worked with Elton John on 3 different album projects between 1972 and 1974, and to a degree helped to establish Elton's prog rock credentials on all of them. In particular, on Elton's 1972 album, Honky Chateau, it's Dave Henschel who is playing the synthesizers on the breakout single from that album, Rocket Man. Going forward to late 1973, to Elton's album, Goodbye Yellow Brick Road, the opening track on that album, Funeral for a Friend, Love Lies Bleeding, as much as a lot of people hate to admit it, is a great progressive rock song. It's exceptionally well constructed and is probably one of the few songs in the early 1970s that would have been given the opportunity to command the airwaves for 11 and a half minutes. Finally, on Elton John's 1974 album, Caribou, Henschel appears on multiple tracks. He is providing the synthesizer on what was the initial single released from that album, Don't Let the Sun Go Down on Me. He also appears on the ballad Pinky, and perhaps most notably, he plays the synthesizer outro on the very disturbing song that ends the album, called Ticking. Ticking is a ballad that, for the most part, features just Elton John on piano, singing a very poignant song about a young man, possibly mentally disturbed, who ends up taking out his frustrations with the world by shooting down 14 people in a New York City bar. The song ends with Henschel's ARP synthesizer with a part that is not overly complicated, but adds tremendous drama to the song on its fade out. If you haven't heard this one recently, I suggest you go back and check it out. It is one that really cuts to the quick. It's very an emotional piece. Again, Elton John, hardly a progressive rock pioneer, to be sure. But again, this is a case where an artist saw what was happening in the music world around him in the early and middle 1970s and leveraged it in his own particular style. It did so to great effect. Curious to hear what you think on this one. I suspect I'm probably going to get even more slings and arrows about Elton John than I did about Led Zeppelin. We'll see. In any event, feel free to click like. Please subscribe to the channel. Leave comments. Oh boy, there are going to be some interesting comments on this one. And I will see you again very soon. Take good care. Bye-bye.